So my name's Chris Poulter. I'm the founder and CEO of OSINT Combine. I'll dial back and give you a bit of intro to sort of how I got to where I am today. I started out in the tech sector, got straight out of school, didn't go into tertiary education. I focused on things that interested me, and in that stage, it was tech. So I got into infrastructure, cloud computing. Well, it wasn't really cloud at the time; it was infrastructure as a service. Tied in a little bit of cybersecurity stuff in there as well, and then ended up being sort of the head of managed services for a independent software vendor there after having worked for a number of larger organizations. And I really sort of found my passion was with small, agile, nimble organizations. Then a few things sort of changed in my life, and I had a bit of a calling to the military. And then got into a very operationally focused part of the military and spent my time mostly deployed over a 12-year career there on sort of around the world in various threat environments. And then towards the end of that, I really had a requirement to leverage open source intelligence in some of the work I was doing, and realized there was a bit of a capability gap that I sort of had a passion by merging my tech background with my military background to help solve, if I could, in any form. So that sparked a new passion for me, and I got out of the military and started OSINT Combine. We initially started as a training organization to try to build some of that curriculum and capability back into the place I just came from to support some of the things I didn't have. And we're really passionate and invested in the outcome of that. Things really evolve quickly. I'll sort of speak a little bit today about some of the development stuff. And I sort of took some of those skills I already had around software development and then just started applying them to what we were doing, and built a software as a service platform called Nexus Explore, which you'll see sort of we're around the world globally. We're in a number of countries globally, and really that is a key part of creating efficiencies in what we do. And then we sort of evolved out into other areas around services and some of the support we can do out into the NGO space. So in terms of a journey, that's really who I am, and really excited to be part of this interview today. So in general, people in our profession use OSINT work on probably a number of facets, very security and threat focused in general. Because we provide a number of different services or offerings out into the market, it really depends on who we're engaging with. So in the corporate space, the people in our environment are very much looking at things around whether it's fraud, investigations into threat actors that might be relevant to their business, through to situational awareness as it might impact their business, whether it's from a competitive or a threat-based perspective as well. The other side of that, where we probably focus a lot of our effort, is in the government sector as well. So what we're looking at there is, again, that security and threat actor sort of posture around, depending on what your use case is, but then also criminal investigations, through to that general intelligence and situational awareness and understanding of things that might be occurring relevant to a different mission set. So that would be a general one, definitely a security and threat lens to sort of what we do. But there is a lot of other avenues that we do see across what we do, because we've got a number of things around training, but then obviously Nexus Explore that we do with our software platform, and it's one of those approaches where you can or you want to be able to ask and use OSINT in any facet of your work. Now, we also see it for companies who want to gain decision advantage in what they're doing. So looking at things in the competitive space and using publicly available information to their advantage to make informed assessments on what's happening around them. So it doesn't always have to be a security lens, but in general, the area that we work is pretty focused on that. So how I personally developed my skills and how I sort of reached this point at the moment was entirely self-taught. So I do come from a tech background before I started, working mostly in infrastructure and a little bit in the security space. Then I got into the military in a completely different line of work, where it was mostly field-based work and operations. And then I kind of converged those two worlds of the understanding of what the geopolitical and the threat-based aspects you get from working in the military with some of that tech understanding together from a concept perspective. But the actual tangible skills such as programming, analytical skills, and just that tenacious curiosity, they were all either ingrained or part of that, that sort of work ethic you draw out of places and the disciplines you draw out of places like the military, or self-taught in terms of no formal university or college education around those disciplines. My university or tertiary education was focused around international relations and geopolitics through one of the degrees we sort of have down here. Yes, that definitely plays a role into these different aspects, but the actual tangible OSINT stuff is really just drawing on that curiosity to go and find out what else can we do here, how can we collect more information, because if you're more efficient at collecting information, it's going to give you more time to analyze it, and that's where you want to spend most of your time. And so, when it came to developing, I really just sort of jumped in and started to figure out how I could develop things that would solve questions that I had at the time. So very tactical. Didn't build tools around how do I actually put something out into the market and how can I turn this into a holistic beast. I evolved into that when I eventually built Nexus Explore to be able to service that into the market. From my side, I was really trying to develop things that would create more efficiencies for me, so I could actually then focus more on analyzing the information when I had those tasks and when I needed to apply them to what was going on in my life in different aspects. So yeah, self-taught, curiosity, and tenacious is definitely just key, because we're all capable of learning new things. And for me, it's how you just learn fast, and then everything else is time. Because if you learn fast, then you can spend your time applying that and practicing those skills, and then actually putting them to work. And again, spending more time on that analysis bit, which is the hardest part of any I guess intelligence function, is actually deriving meaning from all of this information you're collecting. But to do that, you need to work fast to be able to collect the information, so you're actually analyzing the biggest subset of information you have. Yeah, so I'll probably give you three stories of how both myself and people around me and my team have used OSINT, in the real world. And so I'll break them into three sort of areas. The first one really focused on what happened during the Afghan evac and support to that, and where OSINT can play a role to support people on the ground. The second one, I'll talk at more of a high level, just for operational security reasons, around some of the work we do in the counter human trafficking and counter child abuse space with one of the NGOs we work with, and just some of the support. And it really is a support function that we can play there from an intelligence perspective. And then the third one is more in that tactical space. And that was really, from my early days, looking at supporting investigators around, hey, is this a scam site? Is it not? How does that tie into people that have been ripped off with money? So they're the three stories. I'll dial it back to the first one. So the first one is really obviously something near and dear to my heart, around the Afghan evac from my operational experience. And it was at that time when we were really just trying to support how, one, understand the problem set with how rapidly that situation was moving, and two, support that with getting people out that were trying to leave, and get them out safely and give them routes out of a hostile environment when they didn't have a lot of those traditional support elements that they've kind of had for the last 20 years when we were there. So what that related to was doing and pulling my team together, and obviously myself jumping in and being completely part of this around border assessments. What is viable? Where, if people are on the move, where can they move to safely? Route assessments along the way. And where OSINT played a role in that was, everyone was filming everything and putting everything online, so you can drive that into your assessment. Yes, there are information gaps. Those information gaps are coming, or intelligence gaps are really coming from the vacuum that was left after what would be, more sensitive intelligence collection in those areas. And it really highlighted where OSINT plays a role, because when those things disappear instantly, what do you rely on? And the concept that every human is a sensor really plays a role there, because that ties into how you leverage that information to support as best you can assessments for people that are on the ground. And so that was one of the key things, was looking at what was being what the social chatter was, leveraging technical information that was available in different areas, using metadata and satellite imagery and overlays to really tie in a holistic picture of, hey, if you're going to move a large body of people and you want to do it safely, how do you actually do that, and what information can you provide people that supports them. So that was one of the elements. We sort of all pulled together, and the entire community came together and did a fantastic job. So that's certainly not a solo effort. That's and there's people that have done significantly more and contributed more in that space, and a lot of admiration for what everyone did to come together to support the void of information that was sort of occurring at the time. The second case, or the second real life example, is how some of my team supports the counter-human trafficking space. And so in the early days, when I was a much smaller organization and I was just myself, it was really doing that individual support to collection. So how can collection support when someone's trying to do attribution on an individual from a threat actor, or if you're trying to identify a location, and how you can tip into work up geospatial analysis using publicly available information, combining that with social media posts and videos. And I know, Griffin and I spoke at one of the Australian OSINT Symposium a couple of years back, and went through one of those live examples of how that supported, the NCPTF, or the National Child Protection Task Force, in a case they had, which is obviously in support of some other groups. And then even as recently, where now, because I'm fortunate to have a large and extremely capable and intelligent team, they work with NGOs when we have these spot cases around that desktop support for people who are on the ground looking to enact a resolution. So whether that's surveillance teams or law enforcement in those different countries, it's how can we provide at least some insights into the social networks, into the chatter or the pattern of life around these groups, these traffickers, and how they operate. That is really where we play a role, is just trying to support that from a standoff perspective. The third one is the third example of how you can apply OSINT, or how I've applied it, was really, again, right back in the early days, when private investigators, and we had private investigators been doing these things for a very long time, or investigations for a very long time, but the digital domain and the digital terrain is new to a lot of them, and so it was really around how do you support some of those elements with, again, the technical markers. And the prime example of this was scam sites. So we had a case where someone had been ripped off $300,000 through basically an investment scam, and it was supporting that investigator at the time with identifying cookie cutter sites and how it could lead to that point, and what is the legitimacy of a particular investment firm, which was a fake investment firm that was using human intelligence and social manipulation to conduct their activities and entice people in and then rip them off of their money. But it was all the digital markers that could have been used as a precursor. So the outcome for that case was not favorable. The money was gone. The scammers couldn't really be prosecuted. They were in a country that you couldn't really touch. But what it led to was a better understanding for the private investigator, even for their service offerings. If they increase their skills in OSINT, they can offer that as a deterrent or a preemptive thing, where a client could come to them and say, hey, I'm thinking about investing in this. What can you tell me about this organization beyond the human interactions they've had? And that comes down to, you can do some very simple digital profiling, and it stands out pretty quickly if looking at corporate ownership and records and technical markers of the actual web infrastructure and obviously cookie cutter sites, that sort of, and domain squatting and all those sort of things that come into play, can be used as a new service offering. And part of that sort of led into, okay, how do I start training some of these organizations or these individuals with better OSINT skills, so then they can go and offer that into the market as well. And that's where, really pivoted from kind of doing some services work on the fringe as I was getting started, to building a solid training organization beyond just what we were doing on the government sector, and really thought, okay, there's some value here in the private sector, and really got after it from there. So yeah, long-winded answer, but there's sort of three real-life examples of how OSINT can be applied. So if I'm looking at or trying to give advice on if someone wants to get or pursue a career in OSINT, and what are some of the places they can get started, my first thing would be establish your mindset around a toolbox approach. So it's having a lot of tools and techniques, and getting started with understanding the environment you're going to operate in first. because in the OSINT space, in the modern environment, it's very technical. And then start to build up and enhance, your analytical skills and how you actually tie all that information together. But to do those two things effectively, collect and analyze, you're going to need a toolbox approach. So training is obviously key. We have some leading training that we provide, osintcombine.com. We also have it as self-paced online, and it's a gamut of different offerings. There's other fantastic training. There's my OSINT training. Obviously, we're talking to Micah right now. There are a gamut of resources that you can sort of apply. I would look at the OSINT Curious page as well to really get as a baseline to look at, hey, this is some of the people that are involved in the industry. These are some of the techniques that they've gone through. Obviously, if you're looking for a Rolodex of tools and some of the ways you can apply those tools, Michael Bazel's books are a pretty good start point to have on your shelf. But again, it needs to go beyond tools. And so, that Rolodex is great, but it's how do you actually apply them and use them in your scenarios. In terms of resources, check out Griffin's Start Me page. There are, OSINT framework, and we've also got on our website a bookmark stack, which just brings together tools in categories that might be applied to your particular mission. Now, one of the key things is use OSINT to find other OSINT tools. So jump on Google, understand your advanced search techniques and go and find those tools. If you're looking for, hey, what is the social chatter relevant to tools or updated stuff happening today? Hashtag OSINT. Jump it on Twitter. Yes, there's Mastodon and disparate communities and stuff, but Twitter's still a pretty prominent place for chatter about OSINT tools and techniques that I think you should attach yourself to. The other one as well is, be on LinkedIn, look at what the professional offerings are. What are the commercial offerings? I mean, when you need to take this to another level, you're going to be looking at commercial tools like ours, Nexus Explore. There's plenty of other great platforms out there as well. You're going to assess those based on what your mission or requirements are. But by fundamentally having training before you do that, you're going to be able to, one, check the snake oil, two, make a return on investment assessment that's pretty clear. Because you're going to understand what these tools are doing and what efficiencies they're either providing you or what capability gaps they're solving for you. So that's really using OSINT to find OSINT is might be a throwaway line, but it's pretty important because it's going to get you to those areas that you might not be fully aware of.